Dear friends, I have been taking a break from posting videos because I'm working on my second book and it is taking me all my energy. So, but I want to continue with this video, with this demonstration, the Renaissance series. So this video will be about how to move from the skeletal structure on to the muscles and then eventually the clothes. This is a tradition that started in the Renaissance, a technique, a method that started during the Renaissance. And I found this drawing, this sketch by Raphael, or Raffaello as we say in Italy, and it shows exactly that method. So it shows that clearly you see this is un compianto, like una pietà, with Mary holding the dead Christ, right? And Raffaello started drawing the skeleton of Christ. See that? Just to make sure that the body was correctly represented, the way it was falling, the way it was, the way the Mary was holding, the proportion and everything. So let's start with creating a similar pose, right? Where we create first a skeleton, and then over the skeleton I'm going to layer the muscle. So I am starting with the rib cage, right? Let me copy this a bit just to have an inspiration. With the rib cage, I like to start with rib cage. You can start with whatever you want, but I would start with any of the parts of the axial skeleton, meaning either the rib cage or the head or the pelvis. I like the rib cage because it is a big volume, it is dominant, and the other parts kind of follow the volume, the rib cage, because it's the biggest form. So I start drawing an egg, see that? And then I kind of sculpt it a little bit more. I find the details like the sternum and the costal arch, the head. I'm going to block in the head. So the rib cage is about, in terms of size, relative size, is about 1.5 heads in terms of measure. So once I have the measure of the rib cage, I kind of, eyeball the size of and it kind of looks good, right? It kind of looks good. It's a little bit lot bigger than the 1.5, right? So I block in now the volume of the head, about 1.5 heads, and connect this with connect the head with the rib cage via the spine, right? And step back quickly. When I put the sternum in, I want to make sure that the length of the sternum is not as big as the measurement of the head. That's pretty good, like about 7/8 of a head or 3/4 of a head, but it is not as big as the head. So now in here I have the spine, and I see I can imagine a little bit of a relaxed spine, relaxed twist like this, right, of the lumbar spine, and connected with the lumbar spine, I can block in the pelvis, right? So the width of the pelvis is going to be about the same, where's my eraser? The same width as the rib cage in male. So if I can enlarge it a little bit, I can move it here. So the pelvis is a bucket, right? I block in my bucket in here, and then the width is the same as the rib cage, right? And the height is about the same as the head. So I'm happy with that, right? So as I draw, see, I'm going to keep checking the proportional relationship of the various segments. So now I know that head, rib cage, and pelvis are proportioned in relation to each other, right? I'm talking about typical proportion. Of course, if I had to draw a specific human figure, like a specific model, I would look at the specific sizes of my model, right? So at the lower quarter, I had the pubic bone, right? And then the sockets are going to be just above that is the joint, the joint in here of the head, the femurs, like the hips, are going to be starting at the level of the pubic bone, which is at the lower quarter of the total height of the pelvis. Blocking in the legs, right? So I find the joint because I want to connect the pelvis properly with, the femur properly with the hips, right? So once I found the starting point of the femur, I can just look at the angle of the femur, right? And the length of the femur, starting from the top of the head of the femur to the knee, is about 2 heads. So I take my head in here, 1, 2, and then I block in here the distal epiphysis, which is the distant portion of the femur. So from here, now I could also position the other femur right here, and maybe I make the legs a little bit convergent, right? A little bit convergent. So you see what I'm doing. Every time I make a mark, I draw a part of the body, I want to think about it. I want to see how is this proportionally to this part in here, how is this oriented in relation to the body, in relation to the other leg, etc., etc. It seems like tedious, but it's really not. You just have to get used to it a little bit, and then it will become automatic. So now when I block in, let's say the tibia, right? It should be fitting. Yeah, it fits. When I block in the tibia, I want to remember that the length of the tibia and the foot, or the lower leg and the foot, is about 2 heads. So 1 and 2. So maybe that is coming out. So let me actually let me see. Maybe it fits, right? Tibia and fibula, right? So lower leg and foot are about 2 heads, right? So you're thinking, did these guys, the Renaissance, really go through all those steps? Yes, that's the answer, right? So, so now when I draw, let's say, for example, these 2 segments of the leg, femur and tibia, I want to, for example, I had the femur, that's the starting point. I want to see now what angle is the lower leg in relation to the femur. Oh, look, it's about 90 degrees. So now when I do that, if I interpret it, I give it a measurement, it is easier to draw correctly. Now, starting from maybe here, right, I want still to have the same proportional relationship between the two. There's not much distortion coming from the perspective in here because it's fairly, or foreshortening, right? And maybe this leg is going to be slightly converging in relation to this other leg, but the length is going to be similar, right? So, and those are the feet. Now we go back to the top in here, and we see how maybe I could block in the planes of the head just to have an idea of the where to position the facial features, right? Right here, maybe higher, a little bit higher here, right? So this face is too small. I'm gonna lift it a little bit, right? eyes are going to be here. That looks better, right? So now, nose is here. So now, clavicles. So when I block in the clavicle, they're going to start from the top of the sternum. And I want to look at the orientation. How do I do that? Well, compare it to a horizontal line, for example, right? And you can do this. In fact, I encourage you to do this when you draw from life, right? So compared to the horizontal line, see that angle there, right? And you can tell it's not 45, it's a little bit less than that, but I am visualizing an angle. I'm not going to go after this angle because I can make mistake. Having a reference here is, which is either the horizontal line or the vertical line, is much easier, right? So now, at the end of the clavicle, I have the acromion connecting with the clavicle, and now maybe this clavicle is moving up like this, right? So the clavicles can be one going one direction, one going another direction, depending if you lift the arm or not, right? So now I see this, the face is here, kind of leaning against the shoulder, the deltoid, right? And so now I'm going to position the head of the humerus, which is going to be just under the distal portion of the clavicle, which is the acromion. So here, right? And then this other arm in here is going to be positioned here, right? And now I want to block down the length of the humerus. But see what I'm doing? First blocking the axial skeleton, right? Because this is the dominant form. And then from here, what you want to do, blocking the legs, because they are a big form, right? And typically they have the contact with the ground. But, you know, the contact with the ground in this case is relative because the figure of Jesus is very passive, right? Then I put the arms in. But I'm going to put the arms over, right, over the structure of the axial skeleton, which I have established. So now let's say the length of the humerus is about the same length as the rib cage, but because it starts a little bit lower, then it ends up a little bit lower, right? So about the same length of the rib cage, and it ends up at the waist or close to the iliac crest. I can do this consideration because this figure is fairly frontal. There's not much foreshortening, so I can compare this measurement to each other using the typical measurement. If I had instead a foreshortened pose, then that would be different, right? So I'm considering now that this humerus in here is higher, so the arm starts higher, so it's not going to be lined up as the same level as this. It's going to be a little bit higher, right? And now this arm is coming down. So now remember the progressive shortening of the segment of the arm as they move away from the center, where this is the longest, this is slightly shorter, and the hand now is also slightly shorter, right? So now this arm in here, I'm gonna block it in here, over here, right? And then eventually we could do the same thing with the Virgin Mary, but which is here holding Christ, and we see that Raphael also hinted at some of the anatomy of the Virgin Mary, the clavicles in here, and her humerus, and then the sternocleidomastoid. So these guys really knew anatomy very well. So this is my first. This is the first stage, right? So the first stage is block in the skeleton, right? And then block in the muscles, and then the clothes, right? So So at this stage in here, I don't have to be too precious, too precise in doing this because eventually this portion here will disappear, right? Disappear. So I just this is just my thinking process. Where do I put things, right? So now from here, now we're going to take a little break, right? And then I'm going to come back. I'm going to prepare the second part of the video with where I'm going to put the muscles on top. Okay, where I'm going to put the muscles on top. Okay, so we come back now and we see I could now soften up, right? Soften up the skeleton because I don't need to have all this information. I just need to have a guide, just barely visible. So I want to eliminate the excessive noise, visual noise, and then have just a faint line. I hope you can see it, right? Just a faint line, and you need an eraser, right? A faint line so that it can help me in positioning the muscles, right? So you might be able to see it. Yeah, you might be able to see it. So now let's start with the linea alba. So the linea alba and the rectus abdominis because they connect the rib cage and the pelvis, right? So I'm gonna use a nice curve in here, right? Like this, and then blocking in the. So as you see, the rectus abdominis will start a little bit above the costal arch in here, right? And then from here, I have now the abs, the rectus abdominis. The umbilicus is about at the level of the top of the iliac crest, right? And this is the rectus abdominis, right? So what I'm doing now, I am considering the the origin and insertion of these muscles here. I want to know where they start from. I want to know where they end, so I can connect. I can locate them properly onto the skeleton, right? Maybe it's a little bit wider. So the there you go. The abs, the rectus abdominis, will start just above the iliac crest at the 5th, 6th, and 7th ribs. And it will go down to the pubic bone, right? So now from here, I want to block in the pectoralis, right? Not a big muscle. The pectoralis will go from the lower margin of the clavicle like this, right? And then goes over a little bit the rectus abdominis to here, to the side of the humerus, below the head of the humerus, right here. And it twists on itself, right? The pectoralis. Now imagine this figure is relaxed, so I will have to do also imagine the muscle being somehow relaxed, right? Relaxed. So it's the pectoralis, right? The serratus under the pectoralis. Once I find the nipple, about where the end of the pectoralis on the side, the line of the serratus will be in line with the nipples in here. So the serratus adds volume from the side of the rib cage, and it's going to be here, right here, and here. And over the serratus posteriorly here, I will have the vastus the latissimus dorsi, right? The latissimus dorsi. So now, so same thing in here, right? I want to block in the serratus anterior, right? And now following the profile of the rib cage here, I have the external oblique, right? External oblique, come down like this, and then it goes over here, right? Over to the iliac crest, right? That's the iliac spine, and then down like this, following now the volume of the rib cage. Therefore, it moves in and moves out, right here and out like that, right? Like this. Same thing for the side here, right? On the side, I have now the muscle in here, which is going to go out like this to the iliac crest, right? And that is the external oblique on the other side, because as you see from the iliac spine, this is the margin of the the outline of the bucket, and you see how the pelvis slightly turned this way, right? So the one iliac spine is going to be a little bit more inward, and the other one just on the margin of the bucket here. So now we can block in here, right? Have the head. Gonna block the head so we see the head here. So here, right? And then the neck, right? The sternum is here. The ear is here. The sternocleidomastoid will go from the clavicle, which now I'm going to block in like this because the clavicles, of course, are visible, right? It's a landmark. So the landmarks are those spots in the body where the skeleton is palpable, right? You cannot see it. So I do see the clavicles in here. Now, from the neck, I can start with the neck as a cylindrical shape like this, cylindrical form like this, sorry. And then I block in the sternocleidomastoid that will go from the sternum, the top of the sternum here, to the mastoid process here, right? And then the clavicle here, like that, right? And this is going to be the other portion of the sternocleidomastoid, which is in this case is going to be compressed. From the side in here, I have the trapezius, right? Trapezius over here like this, right? And then I have now all the muscles of the neck beautifully, harmoniously connected with each other. In this area here, I'm going to have the scalene group, and I'm going to leave it alone because it's going to be hidden by, it's going to be in there. Here I have the thyroid cartilage, right? And here the jugular fossa. So the deltoid will be here, starting from the lower margin of the clavicle and the acromion here, basically where the pectoralis stops, about halfway on the medial half, right? Here I have now the deltoid muscle here, like this, right? And then coming in like this to the deltoid basically goes halfway down the side of the length of the humerus. Under here I have now the bicep coming down like this, right? And then the two heads of the bicep, because the bicep, and that's why it's called bicep, right? Two heads. One head will go toward the head of the humerus, and one head is going to go toward the coracoid process, which I think we discussed about the coracoid process already, but so maybe look at the old videos to figure out where the coracoid process is. And if you can't, then I'm going to show it to you, right, what it is. So this is the deltoid now, come down like this on this side, right? And then the arm is slightly turned like this, so the deltoid now is going to be here, right, visible on this side here. The bicep now is going to be here, and I have here the division between the anterior part. Actually, let me darken out the serratus so it doesn't compete for attention with the bicep, right? So as I do this, I want to keep an eye on the overlapping of the muscles as they come together, right? So that's the deltoid. The deltoid is over the pectoralis, right? And the pectoralis is over the bicep. So we see these, look at the beautiful spiral that these muscles together they create, right? So this is the tricep in the posterior portion of the muscle. I'm going to leave the brachialis alone. I don't want to put too many muscles in here. And then from here, I would like to show you how to quickly draw the arm. In fact, this is also in answer to one of you asked me about how to draw the forearm. So how to draw the forearm? The easy way is this. Think of the forearm as a 2x4, right? And then on the 2x4, you're going to position a conical shape. Now, where is the conical? And then the hand is going to be here. And quickly, very quickly, you're going to have to achieve an organic semblance, right? You see that? So I could do this, or meaning first the 2x4, right? And then the conical shape. Or I could do this right away because, you know, we're good, right? We're good. So starting from here, starting from the elbow here, I can start with a conical shape like this, right? That gradually tapers, right? And this is the question that one of the followers had: how big should this be? Well, this portion in here, which is the conical shape that tapers, is typically not half the length of the forearm, but a little bit more. See that? And don't make it too big. Don't make it too big. Just a little bit wider than the 2x4. So if it's difficult to do this, practice first with the 2x4 and then put in the conical shape like that. So starting from here, I'm thinking, I know where my wrist is going to be. I know the starting point. So as I create this curving here, I'm thinking, well, where am I? I just more or less just past the middle. See that? So I'm thinking, okay, time to straighten up here, right there, right? So and now the same thing on the other side, and now I have the forearm, and I see how the my arm eventually will become more organic as I add the various muscles, right, of the forearm, which I don't want to get into now because I want to maintain the focus on this idea of layering of the muscle more than the single muscle. The hand, and then you see how as I draw this, I can keep modifying this, right? So if I look at something that is not proportioned, and I just act on it. I just say, okay, you know what? A little bit longer, a little bit shorter, right? So the drawing will keep evolving as you work on it, right? So now so I hope this answer the question. So now I have here the legs, right? Let's look at the legs. The leg I need the pubic bone as reference and the iliac spine here, right? These two. This is where the head of the femur is, right? The leg will start about halfway here. The top of the leg is about halfway between iliac spine and the pubic bone here, right? Like this, more or less. On this side here, I have the gluteus medius, probably also maximum visible a little bit. And from here now, from this point in here, I want to create a conical shape like this, right? Because I can start fairly. It's kind of a hybrid, see that, of between organic and schematic. Same thing for the other leg. Now, the arm in here is going to be over the leg, but I'm not going to draw around the leg. I want to draw the leg as if I did not have any arms on it, right? It's faster, it's easier, and then makes me think in a structural way, right? See how quickly the legs develop. And as I look at this, I start having a better idea of the proportion of my figure, right? So now, from here, I have the knee, right, here. The knee is in here, right? And on this outside, so now let me block the lower leg first. To block the lower leg first, I could do something similar to what I did in here, which is block in the main volume of the lower leg as a cylindrical shape, and then here at this point in here I want to block in the volume of the calf. The same reasoning that we have done for the forearm we're going to do for the volume of the calf, right? But keep this in mind that the calves are going to be they come in all shapes and sizes, so you want to really look at your subject, but typically same proportion that are true for the forearm are also true for the calf. The volume in here of the calves, right, and the muscle of the lower leg, actually, of the extensor of the finger or the toes, this volume here is going to be a little bit bigger than the total length of the lower leg. From here, I taper this forming here, come down like this, right? Taper, go out like that, and now I have the malleoli here, right, and then the foot, right, the foot, and now I want to be more specific about the thigh, the volume of the thigh, right? So let's start from the top, actually. So here I will have two muscles starting. From the anterior superior iliac spine, I will have the tensor fasciae lata, right here, going down like this. And here, therefore, I have the gluteus medius, right here. And from here, the sartorius. The sartorius will divide the thigh diagonally, like this, right? And it disappears behind the volume of the vastus medialis. So that's the sartorius. From here I have the rectus femoris, right? I don't see much of the vastus medialis, and here I have the vastus lateralis here, like this. The vastus lateralis will go to the top of the patella, right? And the fibula, and from under the leg, because you start from the ischium under here, comes out here at this level here, I have the tendon of the bicep femoris here that goes to the head of the fibula. So that is now my next form, my next volume. So this is the side of the leg, right, the vastus lateralis, right, and the rectus femoris here on top, like this, right, and the tendons in here, and from here I will have the volume of, actually I'm going to draw this in black. This is the femur, right, the distal portion of the femur, and below here I have the tibia, and that is the head of the fibula. That is the malleolus, right, of the fibula. It comes out like that, emerges in here, and so now I can do the same thing on the other leg. Starting from the iliac spine, anterior superior iliac spine, I had to aim for, actually, I'm sorry, go back a second. Here, I need to block in the lower leg, same thing, or I could already start thinking, well, that is more or less the direction of the leg. All right, so the volume of the calf is going to be like an oval form like this, and it's going to be not, I mean, it's not half of the total length, but a little bit more, right, a little bit longer than that in this case, right, because you're going to have all sort of differences. So at this point in here, I can block in the foot, right, block in the heel first, and then block in the foot, right, and that's going to be my foot, right, like that, right. So now at this point in here, below the knee, on the top part of the lower leg, I have the goose foot, which is the point where the sartorius, right, sartorius will go, right. So that's the sartorius, right. Sartorius, you see, when the leg is flexed like that here, I'm going to have a clear pattern here that is created by the volume of the hamstrings, right. In this case, it's going to be the semitendinosus, semimembranosus. On the side here, I have the adductors, right here, like this, right. You see the adductors, right, and over the hamstring here, I'm going to have the sartorius, right. So the hamstring, actually, I'm going to leave the gracilis alone because too many muscle, right. So the pectineus, and then iliopsoas, inguinal ligament, and now here at this point here, I'm going to put in the rectus femoris over here, right, rectus femoris, and here the vastus medialis. So all my thing is coming together gradually, right, gradually coming together, and here I will see the tibia right here, creating with the leg extended, creating the Cupid's bow, right, and gastrocnemius here, soleus, and then flexor, hallucis, and toes. So this muscle, they kind of overlap one over the arm. I'm going to leave alone this portion here because it's a little bit more complicated, and we don't need to get into this level of complication for now, right? Tibial tuberosity, or tuberosity of the tibia here, where the patellar ligament goes, right? And now I can block over my figure here the forearm, right? So let's see what happened. The hand is slightly kind of very limp in here, right? So see, be ready to sacrifice. You have to be very pragmatic when you do this. You're thinking, okay, you know, I need to draw this because I want to find the right proportion, the right positioning of the muscle. And once I have done that, and I don't need it anymore, like I didn't need the skeleton anymore, I just get rid of it, just take it out. You're working in stages, right? So the drawing that you start with at the beginning is, you know, usually it's not visible at the end because it's gone, you know. So now, in this case in here, I see the hand turning like that, right? Limp like this. And so you have to understand that these guys in here, the Renaissance, they were dissecting quite a lot of bodies. So in many cases, like probably in this case in here, but also in the case of Titian, for example, right? Pollaiolo, they were copying real dead bodies that they had in the academy. There were quite a few dead bodies dissected in the academies for artists, so they could study anatomy, and then the Medici opened such an academy. And so you can imagine how you see a cadaver like that, right? And you see, oh, that could be the pose of the Deposition of Christ from the cross, for example, right? So so this is now, I could go back in here. Now I add more and more details. I wanted to, right? But I just wanted to show you the method that was codified by Alberti in the Renaissance, right? And then used since basically the modernist time, and it is still used today in the academies, etc. It's been used quite in quite a few academies or school. But this method in here basically has been around for 500 years, because Alberti devised it or theorized it or described it in his books on architecture about actually 600 years ago, right? 600 years ago. So now so this is another example of Renaissance methods that are still in use today, or better, they're kind of resuscitated and so to kind of stay in the theme, right, with the Christ, and used in academies today, right? So okay, I'll try not to let too much time pass between one video and another video, so we can keep going with this Renaissance series, and hopefully I will be able also to answer a few more questions that you guys had so kindly asked me.